fans, hope you're ready for some movie magic. Let's dive right in. The movie starts with a man is infected with an unknown virus. He stumbles back to his village. As if he hadn't eaten in 10 years, he devours the food prepared by his wife. His eyes are bloodshot, and he stares deathly at his wife's neck. By the end of the night, the man mutates. His veins swell, and his whole body twists. Next to him is his child. His wife, unaware of what's happening, enters the room. She finds the man biting something. The man turns around. His face is grim. The woman is immediately terrified. He has completely turned into a zombie and lunges at his wife. The zombie rushes out of the room and attacks the villagers. And this unknown virus originated a few days ago. A group of soldiers hijacked an ocean-going merchant ship. Their goal was the foreign guns on board. But as one of the soldiers was carrying the cargo, suddenly, a man went mad and jumped on him. The others rushed to separate the two men. They took the soldier away from the scene, but this soldier had already been infected with the virus. So the scene at the beginning occurred, and the weapons they looted were seized by Lord Kaneko-kun of the imperial court. Not only were all the weapons confiscated, but they were also reported to the king on charges of usurping the throne. The king listened to his slanderous words. He tortured the group to death, but no matter how much they were tortured, they refused to reveal the mastermind. But at that moment, the mastermind appeared. He was the king's eldest son, the crown prince. His purpose was not to conspire against the king. He just wanted to use the weapons to eradicate these traitors. Eventually, the crown prince was charged with usurping the throne. In order not to implicate his men and their families, he chose to commit suicide by disembowelment. Before he died, he wrote a suicide note to his brother during the Qing dynasty. He asked him to return to Joseon and take his sister-in-law from the palace. Li Qing, who received the note, soon arrived in Joseon with his entourage. But as soon as they disembarked, they found that there was no one to receive them. Although he grew up in the Qing dynasty, he was still Li Qing of Joseon. So they went into the village near the pier. They didn't expect the village to be in ruins. There wasn't a single person in the village. It was as if there had been a war. They walked into the interior of the village. There were charred bodies everywhere. All signs indicated that something terrible had happened here. Since there was no one to meet them, the two had to spend the night here. But at that moment, the guards who were supposed to meet them arrived late. However, Li Qing, who was worldly wise, soon realized something was wrong. So many people had come to meet them, but they hadn't brought an extra horse. Moreover, these people were full of murderous intent. They didn't look like the Praetorian Guard at all. After saying that, he drew the sword at his waist, seeing that they had been recognized. The killers stopped pretending. They immediately launched a siege on the two men. But when both sides were in the middle of fighting, a zombie suddenly rushed out and pounced on one of the killers, biting his neck. Immediately after, ominous hissing sounds came from all around. Countless zombies swarmed from the rooftops. The good villagers had all turned into zombies. They were bloodthirsty and attacked anything they saw. A zombie jumped on Li Qing. He blocked it with his sword. Li Qing also realized that these villagers had lost their humanity. He cut off the zombie's head with one slash. The killers were pounced on one after another. Li Qing and his entourage weaved through the zombies, dodging one after another, but there were so many that they were surrounded in an instant. Li Qing swung his sword, but an arrow suddenly flew out. A woman appeared on the roof. She shot an arrow that made a loud noise, attracting the zombies' attention. Then several more men appeared. They moved swiftly and seemed to know the zombies' weaknesses, quickly wiping out all the zombies. It turned out that these people were his late brother's men. The leader was called Park John-sheer. They had known for a long time that Kaneko-kun in the court was plotting something and would definitely send assassins to kill Li Qing. So they came to help Li Qing, and the villagers had all turned into zombies. They were afraid of sunlight and could only move at night. The only way to kill them completely was to cut off their heads or stab them in the heart. The bodies must also be burned. They are very sensitive to sound, so they needed to get out of there as soon as possible. Park John-sheer took Li Qing to the survivors' gathering place. The villagers who survived were there. The cells still held villagers who were about to mutate. They could turn into zombies at any moment. On the other side, Kaneko-kun W was plotting something. He fed a zombie in the cellar. Then the king's consort was brought there. He opened the cellar and released the zombie. Soon, the consort was attacked by the zombie. The next morning, many concubines were dining with the king. They did not know that the consort infected with the zombie virus was among them. The king is still enjoying his meal, but the consort had already started to mutate. The blood vessels extended to her neck, her eyes turned white, and her body twitched involuntarily. The zombie consort pounced on the king and bit him on the arm. Because Kaneko-kun blocked news of the village's infection, everyone thought that the consort was an assassin sent by the rebels, so they didn't know that the king was infected. Li Qing, on the other hand, was preparing to return to the palace. The villagers wanted him to ask the court to send troops to destroy the zombies. Li Qing also agreed to do so. To protect Li Qing's safety, Park Juncture and the others went with him. But the area has been sealed off as a plague area. All villagers were forbidden to leave the village. Li Qing could only go with his entourage. At the palace, Li Qing met his father, whom he had not seen for a long time. The first thing he did was to report to him that the village was infected with the zombie virus. He did not expect that no one in the entire court knew. They were all kept in the dark by Kaneko Koen. Li Qing asked his father to send troops and let him lead the army to destroy the zombies. The king also agreed to do so. He prepared to leave with his sister-in-law, but Kaneko Koen stopped him. He said that the king had withdrawn his military order and warned Li Qing, "It's better to go back to Qing dynasty now. Otherwise, the consequences will be very serious." The whole court is King Kaoken's inner circle. Li Qing did not dare to do anything rashly. At that moment, the ambassador of the Qing dynasty came to the palace. All the officials of the court knelt to greet them, to entertain the ambassadors. The king had prepared a lively party. Unbeknownst to them, the zombies have spread to all corners of the palace. The palace maids and servants were infected. The king also began to mutate. Kaneko-kun's program is about to succeed. The zombies outside began to gather, and the people at the party did not even notice. They were still singing and dancing happily. The king is also mutating. When he staggered onto the dance floor, the crowd thought he was going to dance, but the court lady who was dancing noticed that something was wrong. By the time she reacted, it was too late. Everyone was frozen in place. Only Kaneko-kun did not change his face. Because he had planned all this, soldiers rushed forward to check, but they didn't dare to stop them because of the king's status. Li Qing then arrives and sees his grim-faced father. He instantly understood that he was infected with the zombie virus. However, the next moment, the king was pierced by Kaneko-kun's sword. The king of the DPRK was killed in public, completely ignoring the ambassadors of the Qing dynasty. Kaneko-kun said he had turned into a zombie. The country has changed its name from now on. I am the king of Joseon and no longer serve the Qing dynasty. By now, a large number of zombies had arrived. Kaneko-kun had already prepared a retreat. He successfully retreated under cover of his men. He only had to wait for the palace to fall and send his troops to clear up the zombies at dawn. Li Qing had no time to grieve. He rushed into the crowd of zombies, found his sister-in-law hiding under the table, and led her to escape from the zombie siege. Li Qing's attendant brought 2 horses. Then they got on their horses and fled the scene. Li Qing escaped and found the leader of the Praetorian Guard. He told him to gather all the Praetorians. Stop the zombies at all costs, otherwise the whole palace is finished. As soon as the words were spoken, the zombies swarmed in. They fought their way out of the horde. Li Qing goes to the dungeon to free the imprisoned villagers. The Forbidden Army prepares multiple defenses against the attack of the zombies, but there were so many zombies that the fortifications were quickly breached. A large number of zombies poured into the palace. The Forbidden Guards had to fight to the death. The zombies cornered them. Li Qing, who was in the dungeon, was also attacked by the zombies. The cell door couldn't stop them either, as the zombies swarmed around them. The monk immediately pried open a door. Li Qing and Park Jungxia used it to stop the zombies. The others took the opportunity to get out. In the end, they all escaped unscathed. The leader of the Forbidden Army led the soldiers to fight until dawn. They suffered a lot of casualties. A zombie also bit the leader on the arm. Luckily, the zombies were afraid of sunlight. They retreated in droves and hid in the shadows. And Kaneko-kun was waiting for this moment. What they need to do now is to destroy all the zombies while it's daylight and start a new dynasty. The ministers had no choice but to submit under his pressure. But while Kaneko-kun was making his speech, a zombie suddenly rushed out and jumped on him, but he quickly took care of it. When he asked if anyone else was infected, the others looked at Kaneko-kun's palm. It turned out that zombie had just bitten him. The ministers immediately changed their faces and were ready to kill him. But Kaneko-kun is at least a battle-hardened military general. A few civil officials are no match for him. All of them were killed by him. Even his inner circle was not spared. Everything he had planned was ruined. He cut off the infected arm and took a lot of drugs to suppress the virus. He became a half-human, half-zombie monster. Li Qing, who escaped from the dungeon, rendezvoused with the Praetorian Guard. To prevent the zombies from attacking again at night, he ordered the chief of the Praetorian Guard to send the soldiers guarding the border to provide support. They stayed in the palace and tried to hold off the zombies. After a discussion, they intended to lure all the zombies to the king's hall with the sound of drums, put dry firewood all around, and pour flammable liquid on it. When all the zombies entered the hall, they would burn them to death with fire. Soon, it became dark, and all the zombies came out. The whole palace became a place for the zombies again. Everyone immediately entered the hall to destroy the zombies. They were going to attract all the zombies to this place. Then, they would use fire to burn them all to death. Li Qing chose to stay and light the fire, but Park Jiangxia said that this country could not survive without a monarch, and he pulled down his collar. The zombies had infected him. The crowd was in grief, but there was nothing they could do but leave the hall. Just as they reached the wall, they heard the drums sounding in the hall. All the zombies gathered in the hall at the sound. With the little consciousness he had left, Park Jiangxia kept beating the drum. When the zombies filled the hall, Park Jiangxia held out until the end before lighting the fuse. But it didn't work out as expected. The fuse was stomped out by a foot. It turned out to be the half-human, half-corpse Kaneko Quen. Park Jiangxia was not able to complete the mission and was upset. Kaneko Quen stepped towards him and stomped out the last hope. Then Park Jiangxia was brutally killed. The fire was slow to ignite. Li Qing realized that something was wrong and that there must have been an accident. But there was only one chance, so Li Qing had to take it. He mounted his horse and rushed to the hall, wielding the sword in his hand. With agile movements and sharp knife skills, weaving back and forth among the zombies, Li Qing walked through a horde of walkers. Finally, he arrived inside the hall. He saw Park Jiangxia, who was already dead, and Kaneko Quen was sitting on the dragon chair. But he didn't stop Li Qing right away. Li Qing continued to bang on the drum. Hearing the drums, the zombies swarmed into the hall again. He was beating the drum and killing the zombies at the same time. But just as he was about to light the fire, Kaneko Quen struck again with the zombie virus. Kaneko Quen's strength had increased. Li Qing was no match for him. Park Diaki outside the palace realized that Li Qing was in danger and shot a fire arrow at the main hall. The arrow stuck in the pillar of the hall. Li Qing leaped up to the beam, took off the rocket, and threw it down. The fire was instantly ignited. The smell of roasting meat filled the air. Li Qing took the opportunity to go to the roof, but to his surprise, Kaneko Quen also caught up with him. The two continued to fight. The mortal Li Qing was defeated again. Kaneko Quen's slashes were all-powerful. Just as Kaneko Quen was about to kill him, Li Qing dodged the fatal blow and followed the momentum back to the roof. He stabbed Kaneko Quen in the chest. Like all zombies, his heart and head were the most important points, but Kaneko Quen wanted to die with Li Qing. Li Qing took the opportunity to break free. Then he grabbed a 40-meter knife and stabbed him. The tiles broke. Both of them fell together. However, Li Qing grabbed the beam and climbed up again. Meanwhile, supporting soldiers arrived. Armed with foreign guns, they quickly wiped out the zombies. Soldiers and civilians cheered for the birth of a new king. The movie ends. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button so you never miss an updates. See you